The Marvel Ultimate Universe is ending. After only 2 years, the new unique Marvel Universe is being sent to its grave, which I guess means DC's Absolute Universe won the new universe competition war. But how did we get here? I mean, I remember in 2023 when Marvel unveiled their new idea for the Ultimate Universe, kind of as a new stepping point for Marvel fans that don't have to read any previous like comic book knowledge or literature to get into the universe, as like this is its own brand new thing. But now, like I said, only 2 years later, we're approaching Ultimate Endgame, and the universe is just dying and is complete. The Ultimate Universe served as a new entry point for fans like myself and others that don't want to read years of backlogs and history of comic books just to know what everyone's referencing. They decided, like the original Ultimate Universe, to kind of create this new universe, and DC actually heard kind of what was going on, and they created the Absolute Universe. It's similar to like the New 52 and the reboots that they've done in the past, but with the idea that you don't have to have literally any previous knowledge of the characters because they're actually going to twist things. It took the iconic heroes that we know and changed drastic things about their origin stories on both the Marvel and the DC side, but also kept true to who the characters are at their core. Like Batman, for example, instead of him being the rich billionaire Bruce Wayne that we know, in the Absolute Universe, Bruce is a blue-collar construction worker. And in the Ultimate Universe, Spider-Man, for example, doesn't become Spider-Man or get his powers until he's well into his 40s and has a wife and kids. Me specifically, I was excited for both of these universes to take off once I heard about them being created because I'm a huge superhero fan. I mean, just look at everything around me, look at my previous channel videos. I just had never really read a whole lot of comics because I was under the impression that both Marvel and DC, it was essentially an insurmountable mountain to try to climb to learn all the lore and the backlog. Even though things like the previous Ultimate Universe existed, I just didn't know where to start. So the idea of two universes simultaneously running through Marvel and DC, I was ecstatic, and I still am. I enjoy both of the universes, but they're obviously without their flaws, and Marvel, like I said, 2 years into it, is closing shop. So why would Marvel gut their best-selling comic book line in like the past decade? Why would they go ahead and just shut this down, seeing all the praise and support that it's getting from Marvel and DC fans alike? In this video, I want to go over that and see what has happened with the Ultimates in real life and why this universe is being shut down, as well as touch on the DC's Absolute Universe, what the two universes did separately to separate themselves and make one successful and make one shut down 2 years into it, and basically see why DC won the what if universe culture war, if you will. But first, before we get into that, if you could please consider liking and subscribing, it just helps the channel grow, helps me know that you guys like these videos, and I'll keep making them because of that. The majority of you guys that watch these videos are not subscribed, so if you please could at least consider subscribing, it would help a lot. Now, to fully understand why the Ultimate Universe is ending, we of course have to go back to when it was created and announced, and why they even did that to begin with. Back in February of 2023, Marvel announces the Ultimate Invasion miniseries. What this details is a major event revisiting the original Ultimate Universe concept from the 2000s, with writer Jonathan Hickman tapped to the helm for a 4 issues miniseries. Hickman's pitch for the universe included a contractual 2-year real-time endpoint to avoid the original Ultimate line's bloat. This inevitably set the stage for Earth 6160 universe to be born, where the maker rewrites history from the 1960s to prevent superheroes from ever being created. A few months later, in May of 2023, a trailer gets revealed for what this universe would actually entail. At a press conference with Hickman, he explained his vision for the new Ultimate Universe. It was, quote, Marvel without the Marvel Universe. It was supposed to be grounded and free from the baggage of 60 plus years of previous Marvel comics, something that I myself and many others really liked the idea of. And during this interview is when Hickman confirms the real in-universe and also in real life, the 2-year real-time publication clock. The maker is imprisoned in the universe, and in 2 years he's going to get out, which is why Ultimate Endgame is coming out 2 years later. So as the issues were coming out in real time, it was actually taking place over the course of the same amount of 2 years in universe. Cut to June of 2023, Ultimate Invasion #1 releases. This is a mini-series that kicked off with showing just the background of how the original Ultimate Universe failed, with the Illuminati trying to stop the maker, and basically explains why the maker is now creating this new Ultimate Universe. It's kind of bridging the gap between the original and now the new. And just for issue #1 for this, sales hit 100,000 plus units, which obviously signaled a strong interest for the series. In this, Hickman planted the 2-year seed. Iron Lad imprisoned the maker for 24 months, dooming his utopia to unravel 24 months later. He was quoted as saying, "The 24-month imprisonment of the maker symbolically mirrors our real-world creative contract. meaning that the universe itself was originally doomed to end mid-2025. And it was at this same point, after the first issue had hit over 100,000 plus sales, Hickman locked in his 2-year contract with Marvel, which is important, and we'll get to that later. Marvel executives like Dan Buckley later recall saying that the contract and the explanation for this universe clearly always had a beginning, a middle, and an end in mind, which, to be honest, I think is the detriment of the Marvel Ultimate Universe. 1 month later in 2023, Ultimate Invasion #2 hits shelves, and this is where all the buzz is going around social media and everything, and Hickman is promoting this hardcore, of course, saying that no prior and previous Marvel knowledge is needed for this universe. Cut to August and September of 2023, that's when Ultimate issues #3 and 4 release, concluding the miniseries. What this event basically did was wraps up the Maker's victory and explains how our heroes are now scattered and locking in again the 2-year ticking timer. With the sales average of 80,000 copies being sold for each issue in this miniseries, it obviously proved viable for Marvel, which then gave them the confirmation to go ahead and create the Ultimate Universe. After the miniseries, Hickman had an interview with a Hollywood Reporter, and he was emphasizing again that there is an end 2 years later with this, and that the contract has already been set in place, which I didn't know this when I started originally reading, but I guess there was a lot of fan speculation that if the universe performs and does well, that they'll kind of rework the contract to keep the universe alive, because that obviously makes the most sense from the standpoint of the fans, but also for business. If you have a universe that's outperforming your previous ones, of course you're going to want to try to keep it alive as long as possible, so tweak stuff with the contracts. But it was obvious that Hickman envisioned this to be a finite saga, a 2-year in real-time countdown to the Maker's return baked into his contracts from the beginning to avoid the bloat of the original Ultimate, which was honestly the downfall apparently to the original Ultimate Universe over its 15-year run. I've read and watched comic historian videos of the Ultimate Spider-Man universe, but I really want to get into it, but I fear and hear stuff like this, where that universe is so bloated that it's hard to get into. Which is funny because the universe, the original Ultimate one, to my knowledge, was created so fans could jump into it. And it sounds like it's this Ouroboros cycle of Marvel knowing and bloating their continuity too much, but to me, at least, I understand the appeal on why they're wanting to keep this shut down for a concise 2-year timeline. But again, as we're going to see later on, this is performing so well. So why are we getting rid of it? 2 months after the miniseries wrapped, Marvel launched in November of 2023 Ultimate Universe #1. It's just a 1-issue one-shot highlighting their main 3 flagship titles, which is Ultimate Spider-Man, Ultimate X-Men, and Ultimate Black Panther. The title launches immediately shattered record sales, with Ultimate Spider-Man, of course, #1 outselling the mainline counterpart, that being Amazing Spider-Man, by well over 50% in the initial orders. And of course, this proved that the audience craved for a grounded story of Spider-Man in this hero-less world where Peter Parker swings into being a hero, not as a teen prodigy, but as a reluctant everyday man in his 30s to 40s. And at first, fans like myself were ecstatic for Jonathan Hickman to be writing Spider-Man and Brian Hitch to be doing the art for Spider-Man. I mean, this is Marvel royalty for the comics. The first print was a huge success. It was a huge sellout. Critics and fans alike were calling it one of the best debuts that Marvel Comics had done in years. And it felt like, for a brief second, that the Ultimate line was back. But unfortunately, as the issues went on and other books and series got put out in this universe, the cracks of the universe started to be shown. Ultimate Black Panther, for example, had a very cool concept, Wakanda being isolated, protecting itself from the Maker's chaos, but unfortunately, it struggled to have a consistent tone. And the Ultimate X-Men alike, despite being one of the more creative books, launched months later, and the initial hype cooled down very quickly. You see, the problem wasn't the stories. It wasn't the what-if factor of twisting things about the characters, because that was being done across the street with the Absolute Universe at DC. And they were performing, and still are, very well. The issue was the strategy of the rollout and the behind the scenes of the issues. Marvel didn't really give the fans a reason to care about the universe as a whole. There was no Avengers team, no real crossover, just 3 separate independent titles that felt like they existed in their own bubbles. And I'm the perfect case example for that. I'm wearing a Spider-Man Christmas shirt, I've got Spider-Man tattoos, I'm a Spider-Man rug I'm sitting on. I am a huge Spider-Man fan. I like the Black Panther movies. I know a little bit about X-Men lore, a little bit about Black Panther, but I read one issue, issue 1 and issue 1 of Black Panther and X-Men, and I was like, okay, I tried to get into it. It just wasn't for me. And at first, I thought that was very appealing, right? And that's kind of how I treat the Absolute Universe. I read what I like, I read what I know I'll like, and then what I don't think I'm interested in, I just won't read. But other fans, more hardcore comic fans, were seeing the cracks, like I said earlier. Everything felt discombobulated and just unique, and there was no overall tie-in to the grander Ultimate Universe, especially with like the looming head count in real time of the maker coming back out and just doing this huge problem with him being released and the whole reason the universe was created. You have these independent titles with a looming overhead story, but we're like 10 issues into each of the three main titles, and there's no mention of a crossover, or it doesn't even seem like there's a thought for that happening. It's no wonder fans got disinterested pretty quickly. And this started to become blatantly obvious when you started looking at the sales. In early 2024, sales declined not only for Ultimate Spider-Man, but the others as well. Spider-Man was doing okay, but the others, their sales were fading and fading fast. When you build your whole universe on three pillars and two of them are cracking and fading away, it's pretty easy to tell the longevity of the universe isn't looking pretty bright. The first Ultimate Universe worked with Marvel because everything felt cohesive and connected. Ultimate Spider-Man led into the Ultimates, which tied into Ultimate X-Men, which built up to Ultimateum. It felt like an actual parallel to the original Marvel world. The main issue with the new one is that, like I said earlier, you can read Ultimate Black Panther and have no idea what's happening in Ultimate Spider-Man. And at the beginning, that's good, keep your story separate. But after 2 years and there's no crossover, it's less of a universe, more one-off storytelling. With zero crossover energy or connective tissue, which is ironic because Hickman's entire brand was long-term interconnective storytelling, Marvel really had nowhere to go with this. They never gave a clear answer of when the books would eventually connect and tie in together, even if there was a plan to do so at the beginning. By mid-2024, they expanded their lines. They saw they needed to create new ones, whether it was originally designed for this or they started scrambling. They came out with the Ultimates. They came out with Ultimate Wolverine. And I'm pretty sure the plan with this was to help with the connective tissue of how it felt like there was no crossover happening in this whole universe. And so by the time in mid-2025, this summer, when they launched Ultimate Endgame, which is supposed to be everything coming together, most of the casual fans, myself included, have kind of moved on. I'm looking forward to Ultimate Spider-Man wrapping up, but I couldn't care less about any of the other lines. Though by late 2024, Ultimate Spider-Man was still a top seller, floating towards the top 10 list for Marvel. But like I said, Ultimate Black Panther and Ultimate X-Men were way lower. Stores reported less reorders and less demands, and collectors started saying the quiet part out loud, that this just feels like a mini event and not a whole new universe being created. And honestly, they weren't wrong. Without new launches, without crossovers, without new expanded lore in this universe, the threat of the maker looming over the past like a year and a half or 2 years is less and less. The stories themselves were solid. I mean, Ultimate Spider-Man stayed strong for the most part, but release delays and the lack of synergy made most readers check out. By late 2024, Black Panther and X-Men were slipping below the top 50 sales in the charts. Even diehard fans of the universe and Marvel in general started to say that they felt like Marvel had just entirely moved on from this new created universe. And remember the 2-year time clock and contract? That meant that Hickman's plan and universe had to be done by the end of 2025. But just as fans started to settle in and kind of get used to the new Ultimate Universe, Marvel announced Ultimate Endgame. At San Diego Comic-Con 2025, Marvel confirms that Ultimate Spider-Man will end with issue number 24, followed by a 5-part event called Ultimate Endgame. Every title, from Black Panther to X-Men, Ultimates, Wolverine, and Spider-Man, would be wrapped up by the latest of early 2026. This wasn't a cancellation. This was the plan from the beginning, but many fans like myself go on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Reddit, were speculating. They're like, there's no way that there wasn't some other stuff happening behind the scenes. A lot of the fans felt like they were cheated on. They were sold this new Ultimate Universe. Obviously, people are going to compare it to the previous Ultimate Universe, but instead they got what felt like a long mini-series. Meanwhile, over at DC, they definitely took notes. In 2025, their new Absolute Universe launched. It wasn't a reboot, but it was a partial world design with long-term growth. Where Marvel built walls around the Ultimate Universe, DC just simply built a bridge. Critics praised its mythical storytelling and, quote, freedom from editorial control, while Marvel's experiment started to feel more like a lab test that ended early. DC obviously made the correct decision, seeing that Marvel trapped themselves into a cage. So in October of 2024, which similar to Marvel where they launched Ultimate Black Panther, X-Men, and Spider-Man at the same time, DC launched Absolute Superman, Absolute Batman, and Absolute Wonder Woman at the exact same time, stealing from their blueprint. With the expansion of the universe absolute roaring in 2025, titles like Absolute Flash, Absolute Green Lantern, and Absolute Martian Manhunter were set out. They started to balloon at over 2.5 million units sold in the month of February 2025 alone, with Absolute Batman claiming #1 in 2024's top spot, with pre-orders being over 180,000 sold. DC obviously learned from flops like Earth 1 and New 52, prioritizing the Absolute Universe with a quote, visually new underdog arc and its shared continuity. No prior reading was needed for this universe, and that's obviously what set them up for success. Like what I want with these universes, DC knew exactly what to do. With the sales war in 2025, DC's Absolute Universe raked in 15 of the top 50 titles, whereas the Ultimates, they only had 10. So it's clear, you look at the numbers, DC's on top, they're winning. Also, Marvel's shutting down. So DC won the war, which I made a video on my channel back, I want to say like a year ago. I was like, ooh, what would the Marvel universe be like if they were DC? Because I think DC is going to win this, but I'm like a Marvel truther. DC absolutely smoked Marvel with this. They're closing shop. And the sales absolutely underscore this. DC's Absolute Universe had a 27% shop uplift according to Comic Hub in 2025, versus the Ultimates plateaued at 12% post-year one per Publishers Weekly. This stems from DC's hunger for a visually new title. To round out this video, I'd like to read a quote from Hickman explaining the universe. Again, I think something was changed. I don't know all the behind the scenes. I looked for stuff, I found speculations, but I couldn't find anything official. So to go for Jonathan Hickman, the creator of the universe's official quote, he reads that quote, "This was everything that I pitched. Nothing has deviated. It's been really nice to execute the plan well, and everything culminates to this final issue. Fans of the Ultimate Universe are going to love it. It's been a real pleasure of mine to be the writer of Ultimate Spider-Man. Doing this tight continuity stuff in a smaller line, the execution from the company on this has been great, and it's stuff we should all keep trying to do. You guys continue to support the book. It's the only reason why we can tell the stories this way. Hearing you like this give us the opportunity to do so many more things like this." Marvel's new Ultimate Universe had endless potential. It had a clear plan and a clear path ahead, but obviously something changed. If I had to put on my tinfoil hat and express my conspiracy theory or my thoughts behind it, I bet Hickman tried to expand this. I have no reason to think this, but I bet Hickman tried to continue his contract and expand it, seeing how well it had performed, but Marvel and the CEOs and everyone behind it, the shareholders that obviously don't know what the fans really want, decided, nope, we signed a 2-year contract, it's done after this. With Marvel confirming in October of 2025 the official shutdown, everything's closing shop in 2026. So it just has me speculating and looking at what could have been with this universe. I'm a fan of this universe. I'm a fan of the Absolute Universe. I want both companies to succeed because we get the best outcome as fans if that's the case. But what do you guys think? Do you think there was a hidden conspiracy behind everything? I'm still not entirely convinced that they're not going to somehow revive this universe after the quote unquote universe ends in early 2026, because financially it just makes no sense. So I hope they continue this universe, but going with the official story, it is set to end early 2026. So I guess we'll have to just wait and see. I wanted to create this video as more of a recap to see how we got here, but let me know you guys' thoughts down in the comments of the universe, and if you're excited to see what's to come, or you're just ready to close shop and never remember the Ultimate Universe and what once was. But as always, thank you guys so much for watching the video. If you could, please consider liking and subscribing. Like I said, it helps the channel grow, helps me know that you guys like the videos, and I'll keep making them because of it. But I will see you guys in the next video. Take care. Bye.